How should we feel about this Mariners road trip, Jeffrey?
Hasn't been great so far, guys, but all of the games that they had played leading up to it, it buys you a buffer to have some down moments during the season. And I would take in totality the way that the Mariners have been playing. You're going to go through times like this. And I just I look at who the Mariners are, and this last week has not shaken my faith in their ability to be a really good baseball team.
So I would agree with you on that, and we knew this was going to be a tough trip. Baltimore, Queens, Williamsport, Philadelphia, August, rain delays, humidity, good pitching. Like, this was always going to be a bit of a challenge, so the last thing you ever want to do is judge a team during this very difficult spot, and they'll come back, and, I don't want to be the guy who is down on them now, and then you find out in a week and a half, once they get back home and the schedule normalizes into September, that, that was just a blip on the radar screen. But the starting pitching thing is starting to become a bit of an issue, and especially on the road. Logan Gilbert, ERA on the road of 6, Kirby 5, Castillo almost 5, Logan Evans over 5, Bryce Miller over 6. Brian Woo's the only guy at 3.5 with a somewhat normal ERA on the road, and that does kind of jump out to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, have you thought what the explanation of that could be?
Well, the horrible explanation is these guys are okay pitchers who have been benefiting from T-Mobile Park for a long time. I'm not willing to say that, but I mean, that would be the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know, man. I have trouble buying that because there are just so many other measures that illustrate that it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff, I look at the stuff, and it's why I'm not trying to pivot away from this question because I don't have a good answer, but I want to look at Bryce Miller for a second because to me it's just illustrative of how stuff plays. Bryce Miller earlier this season, like when he was hurt, was throwing a fastball like 94. So far on his rehab outings, he's been up at 96 plus. The extra 2 miles per hour, I think, are going to make a world of difference in terms of just productivity and his ability to go out there and be the kind of pitcher that we've seen from him in the past. And that's the thing. I don't see degradation of stuff with the other guys that could explain this away. And so it's I hate doing this. It's such a cop-out to say small sample, small sample, small sample. But I don't know, man. I think that I spend more time looking at a player's history and what he's done than judging him on a handful of games. And that's kind of what we're dealing with here. It's a little more than a handful of games for guys. And I'm not going to give up on them because of that.
I'm sure the organization, Salky and Passan, right, will do a deep dive on this. And if we just have to try to come to some conclusions, I would think the freedom that you get, and this is just, and maybe it's a terrible analogy, but it's the best I got. Like, I knew when I was playing against a bad corner, like, I can just throw that ball up, man. I've got a chance. Like, my margin is so much greater than when I'm playing an elite corner that's got his eyes to me, and I better be very, very precise that, when you do get to pitch in T-Mobile, you can get away with a few more mistakes than you get away with in Philadelphia, in New York, in Cincinnati, in some of these different places on the road. So I wonder if in any way that affects their pitch selection, their pitch psychology, their margin.
Easier to throw strikes when you know that those strikes may not go as far, right?
I think all of that is totally fair, and discounting that things change between home and road would be foolish and would be naive. You pitch to your environment, you pitch to your opponent, and as much as guys want to say, I take it one pitch at a time, and the opponent doesn't matter, and it's about my execution, that's just such a lie. Like, I'm sorry, if you're facing Aaron Judge versus facing Donovan Solano, but facing Donovan Solano, like, you're telling me you're not going to pitch them differently? Of course you are. You have to. You should. If you don't, you're an idiot. And so I look at, the environment does allow you to pitch a little bit differently. It's the fundamentals, though, that have to remain the same. You need to get ahead of guys. You need to have the ability to command the ball. You need to have a variance of pitches so that guys don't get comfortable on one. There are all of these factors and elements that are in play, guys. But at the end of the day, I think what I'm looking at and what's most important to me is how do the Seattle Mariners pitchers, not just the starters, but how do all the pitchers perform against playoff caliber lineups? And yesterday, they did not perform. It was bad, and I don't look at Logan Gilbert any differently because everyone has allowed a bad day at the office, and he's been really good otherwise this season. But it's just a reminder that even when arguably your best pitcher is out there on the mound, when you're facing a playoff caliber team, bad things can happen, and it's why the offense is so important because it needs to do that to the same types of pitchers that those teams are throwing out there.
How common is it for a good pitcher or even just a good pitching staff to go through a lull in August and maybe come back out of it a few weeks later?
Perfectly normal. You don't like to see it, but there have been situations where teams have absolutely faltered toward the end of seasons and gone and won World Series. Look at the 2023 Rangers, for example. They were not very good down the stretch, and they kind of limped over the last couple months into a postseason spot, and then they just figured it out. So I am not the kind of guy who thinks peaking early is a thing. Like when I'm talking with people about the Brewers, they will ask, are they peaking early? And my response is no, they're playing good baseball. and that's never a bad thing. But I just as I don't think that winning in September necessarily puts you into a position to be better off, I don't think losing dooms you to this awful October exit. It just, I hate to chalk it up to this, but it's like, who do the baseball gods say are going to play well around postseason time? This is not the NFL where your quarterback dictates your success. This is not the NBA where superstars dictate your success. This is baseball where the 26th guy on your team has a decent chance of being as much of a hero as your MVP candidate. Like that's just how the game goes. It's just how it plays out. It's why I love baseball, honestly.
What's the conversation right now with your pals in Houston? What are we seeing out of the Astros?
Losing Josh Hader hurts. Getting Christian Javier and Spencer Arrighetti back helps. To me, a lot of the season in the American League West is going to hinge on Yordan Alvarez. Does he come back as the Yordan Alvarez who we have seen as wrecker of worlds, or is he the Yordan Alvarez we saw this year who's a diminished version of himself? If they can get him back in the middle of that lineup that now has Carlos Correa, has Jeremy Pena back, and will begin to look much more like a major league lineup than it has throughout this entire season, then I think the Astros are going to be dangerous and are going to be a really difficult team for the Mariners to overcome. Without Alvarez in there, I think the Mariners are the favorite to win the division. Simple as that.
The Mariners are 68 and 58, Jeffrey. 68 and 58, exactly 54% right now. That means they've got exactly 36 games left. We debated this yesterday. 36 games to go. Cal sits at 47 home runs. How many does he end up with?
I think 57.
Oh.
I think he's going to go on a heater here.
Mm-hmm.
If he gets to 57, is he going to win the MVP?
Cal Raleigh wins the Gold Glove. He hits 57 home runs. He shatters Salvador Perez's records. He does things never done in this sport, and he's still 250 OPS points behind Aaron Judge. Can he still win the MVP?
Yes. I think if he gets to 57 home runs, he wins the MVP.
Yeah, I think that would be a good way of looking at it as, hey, it's the MVP, not the highest OPS award, right? And I'm not taking anything away from Judge. That OPS is insane.
The counter to that, though, is if you're putting up an OPS 250 points higher than someone else, then you are inherently going to be more valuable than them.
Yeah.
In some ways.
This is a really tough one for me because I've been involved in these, like, let's assess the difference between a guy who's really awesome at hitting and a guy who's really awesome at everything, but not quite as awesome at hitting as the first one. I've tried to look through these in past cases, and normally it's like if there's 100-point difference in OPS, then yeah, you can rationalize that the guy's defense is going to make up for that, or his base running, or his all-around play. 250 is an enormous gap.
It's a lot.
It is a huge gap, and it is not something in my mind that can be bridged by defense alone. I think the time that Aaron Judge missed comes into play here. And I understand he was on the injured list for only the minimum time, but he's DHing now. So there's stuff that's going to be taken away there. When I used to vote on awards like MVP, I would consult WAR, but I would not abide by it. If I felt like there was a player who was more valuable and WAR disagreed, then I was fine going against it because I look at wins above replacement not as this biblical thing that's written and that you must adhere to, but rather as something that points you in the right direction to the general value of a player, and then you can figure out how close to accurate you believe it is and what your priorities are. As of right now, if I were voting for MVP today, I don't know what I would do. I would probably lean Raleigh 51 times and Judge 49 times. Like, it's that much of a coin flip to me at this point.
I was surprised, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was a little surprised to hear the commissioner talking so openly about expansion and realignment during the game the other day. I love the idea of realignment. Certainly, I think everyone in Seattle does, since the Mariners have to travel more than anybody else. Does the league?
What kind of realignment is going to make them travel less?
Well, I mean, instead of going,
you guys are far away from everything.
Yeah, but it's under 1,000 miles to, Arizona, to Vegas, to LA, to Anaheim, San Francisco, even Salt Lake if they end up there. It's 1,600 miles to Texas and Houston. So that's a pretty significant difference. I'm not saying it's the total game changer, but it's a good thing for the Mariners. Probably as good as anybody else. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's the rub of that though. Would you rather baseball be aligned geographically or be aligned through the structures that have been in place?
Right.
Essentially since the turn of the 1900s, and have an American League and a National League.
Well, it sounds like what I want isn't going to happen.
Away.
It does sound. I mean, he kind of made it sound like they might. Like those traditional structures may go away, and all of a sudden you may end up with the Red Sox, Mets, Yankees, and Phillies or something in one division, which would be crazy.
I think that would be a catastrophic mistake. But somebody did suggest to me yesterday something interesting. He said, what if Major League Baseball took care of its competitive balance problem by sticking all the good teams out east and all the high payroll teams together? And my retort to that was, well, unless the schedule is completely unbalanced,
right,
where you're facing in-division teams 20 times a year and everybody else less than that, then I guess at that point. But I don't know, the idea of baseball as I know baseball is a local game, but the idea of making it into just a regional game where you're going for regional supremacy, I don't know, that just maybe it's just because of what I'm used to, having spent 44 years on this planet, but it does not appeal to me personally.
Does baseball need 52 more players in the big leagues? Can it handle 52 more players in the big leagues?
Yeah, I think it can handle 52 more. I think the talent pool is there right now. Look at all the good players in the minor leagues who have not been called up because of any number of reasons. I don't think that the game would suffer for having those 52 extra spots.
Last thing for me, Jeff, the nervous Nelly Mariner fan out there that was just on an absolute high with a 9-1 homestand. Oh my gosh, the trade deadline bump, all of the emotion and the passion that we had last week. And then, as we've talked about, a tough road trip here that has maybe, sunk in and brought some of the scars of the past back to life. How do you calm down an anxious, maybe a little nervous fan base going through this bump in the road?
I don't know if it's a little nip of whiskey. I don't know if the half an Ativan, or I don't know if you can just breathe yourself into calmness. But understand that baseball does this to you, and you are in control of your life and your emotions. And if you remind yourself that one game, even when all of the games matter so much, one game does not dictate what the rest of the season is going to look like, and that when you look at it holistically, you see a great pitching staff, you see a great lineup, you see a team that plays good defense and runs the bases well. All of those fundamental elements are in place for the Seattle Mariners to have a memorable season. And rather than allow yourself to be dragged into the doldrums by what, 9 innings will tell you, look instead at the previous 1,000+ innings and remember that this team has shown that it is very good and that it will continue to be.
Well, that's a very nice sentiment. I appreciate that. But I'm very curious to see how an audience that's trying to justify Victor Robles throwing his bat because he got hit a couple of times previously is going to take a hold of their emotions. Jeff, they're trying to justify throwing his bat. What are we doing? You can't throw your bat. Yeah. That's Little League Day one.
It was embarrassing and immature and wrong,
and
I think he knew that. Look,
of course.
He's been going through a lot. All of us go through a lot, and we don't throw things at other people. So he will be the suspension, I fear, will be long, and it will be entirely justified.
Yeah, totally agree. Jeffrey, thank you. We got to run. Speaking of long, we've run long, but we'll talk to you next Tuesday. Appreciate it.
See you, boys.